Today, May 5th, something shifts, not in a way you can dismiss, not in a way logic can contain. It arrives quietly, but with weight, like a truth that has been waiting beneath your awareness, now pressing forward, refusing to stay hidden any longer. The moon moves into Capricorn, and with it, something opens. Not just a moment, not just a feeling, a portal. But this isn't about surface-level attraction or temporary emotion. This is something deeper, something that has been forming long before you had words for it. If you've been feeling a pull lately, something you couldn't explain, a connection that didn't follow logic, that wasn't your imagination. That was alignment. Before we go further, take a moment to like this video, subscribe and comment, "I am ready." Because what you're stepping into now isn't just information, it's activation. Beneath your everyday reality, something has been building, quietly, consistently, without needing validation. A magnetic connection that exists beyond timing, beyond distance, beyond physical presence. You may have tried to rationalize it, tried to convince yourself it wasn't real, tried to reduce it to coincidence. But energy doesn't need permission to exist. It simply does. And this connection, this pull you feel, has been strengthening in the unseen. Now, as the Capricorn moon rises, something changes. Capricorn doesn't deal in illusions. It grounds, it stabilizes, it makes real what once only existed in feeling. What was hidden begins to take form. What was silent begins to speak. And when you look back, you start to see it differently. The silence between you and this person was never empty. There were moments, subtle but undeniable. A glance that stayed just a second too long. A shift in your energy the moment they entered your awareness, even from a distance. A knowing that didn't come from thought, but from somewhere deeper. At the time, you questioned it, wondered if you were imagining things, if you were assigning meaning where there was none. But what you felt was real. Because when energy is strong enough, silence becomes a language. And that language doesn't need words. It lives in intuition, in awareness, in the way your inner world responds before your mind can explain why. Now, that silent language is translating. The Capricorn moon brings structure to what once felt intangible. The space where nothing was said is about to reveal everything. And once that clarity arrives, you won't be able to unsee it. There was a time when this connection felt confusing, unstable, like emotional fog. Moments of intensity followed by distance, clarity followed by silence, certainty followed by doubt. And that confusion made you question everything. The connection, your intuition, even yourself. But that phase was never chaos. It was preparation. Because anything real, anything meant to anchor into your life, must first pass through the unseen. It must be tested, stripped of illusion, filtered through uncertainty until only truth remains. And now, that process is ending. The fog is lifting. What once felt unstable begins to ground. What once felt uncertain begins to clarify. You're no longer searching for answers, because the answers are beginning to find you. What once felt uncertain now feels undeniable. And the truth that begins to emerge carries a strange duality. It may catch you off guard, yet at the same time, it will feel familiar. Like something you've always known, but were never ready to fully see. Because there is always a moment, right before something significant reveals itself. A moment where the energy becomes so strong that your soul recognizes it before your reality does. That is where you are now. At the threshold. The space where the unseen begins to take form. Where what was hidden prepares to step into visibility. This is why your energy feels different. You may feel restless, heightened, unusually aware of your emotions without a clear reason. Your thoughts drift toward this person more often. Their presence feels close, almost tangible, even across distance. And part of you wonders why. But this isn't random. This is alignment in motion. When two energies are preparing to meet in truth, something larger begins to move. Thoughts synchronize. Emotions mirror. Circumstances begin to shift, quietly, precisely, not in obvious ways, but in ways that are impossible to ignore once you feel them. You are not imagining this. You are experiencing it in real time, as the energy builds toward revelation. And here's what changes everything. This connection does not exist only within you, it exists within them too. They have felt it, the same pull, the same unexplainable resonance, the same awareness that something here cannot be dismissed. They may have tried to ignore it, distract themselves from it, convince themselves it wasn't real or wasn't practical. But truth doesn't disappear just because it's inconvenient. Because this was never about timing, never about circumstance. This is energetic alignment. And alignment doesn't fade. It waits until it can no longer be denied. Now, under the Capricorn Moon, something shifts. Capricorn doesn't allow avoidance. It demands responsibility. It demands truth in structure, in reality, which means they are reaching a point where they can no longer hide from what they feel. And when someone stops hiding from their own truth, everything inside them begins to reorganize. The internal conflict dissolves, the resistance weakens, and what was once buried begins to rise. At the same time, something else is happening within you. Not everything from your past can move forward with you. Old patterns, old beliefs, old stories you told yourself about why this connection wouldn't work, they begin to fall away, and yes, that can feel unsettling, like something familiar is slipping. But what's actually happening is alignment, real alignment. Because this moment is not just revealing a connection, it's removing everything that stands in the way of it. You may feel it. Sudden realizations, emotions surfacing without warning, a release you didn't expect. This is not loss. This is transformation. Space is being created within your life, within your energy, for something that matches your truth at a deeper level. What is leaving was never meant to stay, and what is arriving carries a sense of inevitability. Now, the energy reaches its peak. The portal doesn't just open, it becomes real. This is the moment where everything converges, where the invisible becomes visible, where the intangible becomes undeniable. The Capricorn Moon grounds it, anchors it, makes it real in a way you cannot dismiss as coincidence or imagination. And when truth takes form, it changes everything. The way you see this connection, the way you see yourself, the way you understand what comes next. This may arrive suddenly. A conversation, a realization, a moment of clarity that redefines everything. And yes, it may feel intense. Because this is not new energy, this is truth finally stepping into the light. Something about this moment should make you pause. Because if you look closely, you will realize that nothing unfolding right now is accidental. Nothing is misplaced. Nothing is happening without purpose. And deep down you can feel that this has been building long before you ever had the words to describe it, long before your mind could organize it into something logical. And now, you are standing in a space where confusion begins to dissolve, and something far more undeniable takes its place. A kind of awareness that feels both new and strangely familiar at the same time. As if you are remembering something rather than learning it for the first time. And this is where the shift becomes real. Because what you once believed was external, something outside of you, something happening somewhere beyond your control, begins to reveal itself as something deeply internal, something that you are actively stepping into, something that is quietly restructuring the way you experience reality from the inside out. And once you cross into this awareness, even if you try to go back, even if part of you wants to retreat into what felt safer, before you will find that you cannot return to the version of yourself that existed in uncertainty, because that version no longer fits who you are becoming. And as this realization settles, the energy that once moved subtly begins to intensify it. No longer stays in the background, it moves into your emotional field. And this is where things start to feel undeniable, because awareness on its own is one thing. But when awareness begins to touch your emotions, it becomes something you cannot ignore, something you cannot rationalize away. And you may notice this as a rising wave within you, a mixture of anticipation and exposure, excitement blending with a quiet fear that you cannot quite explain. And this happens because truth, when it surfaces, does not arrive gently. It arrives with presence. It demands to be felt. It asks you to engage rather than observe. And this is the moment where you are no longer watching from a distance. You are inside the experience itself. And the connection you have been sensing begins to move deeper, reaching into parts of you that are not easily accessed through logic, inviting you to feel fully rather than analyze safely. And this can feel overwhelming, because real feeling requires openness. And openness requires a kind of courage that not everyone is ready to access. But what you are experiencing is not here to shake you apart. It is here to root something deeper within you, to anchor truth into your emotional body, so that what unfolds next is not something you question, but something you recognize with certainty. And as this intensity continues to build, something unexpected begins to take shape. You start to see yourself in a way that feels almost unreal in its clarity, as if a veil has been removed and replaced with a lens that allows nothing within you to remain hidden. And this presence, this connection becomes more than just another person or experience in your life. It becomes a reflection so precise that it reveals not only the version of you that the world sees, but the version of you that exists beneath every layer you have constructed over time. And suddenly, the parts of you that used to operate quietly begin to surface: your desires, that you rarely admitted even to yourself, your fears that shaped your decisions without your awareness, your patterns that repeated in ways you could never fully explain, your capacity to love deeply, and at the same time your hesitation to fully receive that same depth in return. All of it begins to rise into your awareness with a force that cannot be dismissed. And this is not a gentle unveiling. This is a direct encounter with truth, one that moves past your defenses and speaks to something much deeper within you. And as you observe yourself within this connection, you begin to notice how you react, how you interpret, how you feel, even the smallest shifts. And in doing so, patterns that once remained hidden become impossible to ignore: the way you guard your heart, even when connection is genuine, the way you expect things to fall apart before they even begin, the way unfamiliar sincerity can feel almost uncomfortable because it does not match what you have known before. And all of this rises not to criticize you, not to diminish you, but to bring understanding to parts of yourself that have been waiting to be seen. Because this kind of connection does not allow you to stay unaware, it calls you forward. It invites you into a state of wholeness by showing you every piece of who you are, even the parts you once avoided. And within this intensity, there is also something profoundly empowering, because while this reflection reveals your vulnerabilities, it also illuminates your strength in ways you may have never fully acknowledged. You begin to recognize your ability to feel deeply without losing yourself, your capacity to connect beyond surface-level interactions, your resilience in navigating emotional complexity, and your readiness for something that is real and meaningful. And this reflection does not only show you what needs healing, It shows you what is emerging, a version of you that is no longer confined by past limitations, a version of you that is stepping into alignment, authenticity, and a deeper sense of personal power. And there may be moments where this clarity feels intense, moments where you are faced with truths you did not expect to encounter. But this is not here to destabilize you. It is here to free you, because when you can see yourself without distortion, without illusion, you gain a level of awareness that shifts everything. You are no longer reacting from unconscious patterns. You are choosing with intention. You are no longer questioning your value. You are beginning to recognize it. And as this realization continues to unfold, you can feel that something even deeper is preparing to emerge, something that will take everything you are beginning to understand and bring it into an even more tangible form in the next phase of this experience. Pay attention to this moment, because something that once gave you distance to think and analyze is now fading away, and you can feel it even if you cannot fully explain it yet. The space that once allowed you to stand back and observe without being affected is dissolving right in front of you, and what used to feel far away is now stepping directly into your present reality. What once felt confusing is sharpening into something unmistakably clear, and with that clarity comes a realization that may feel both empowering and unsettling at the same time. Because you are no longer in a position where you can remain neutral, you are being asked to make a choice not through pressure, but through awareness. A choice to either move toward what is opening or to consciously step away from it. And this is exactly where a deeper emotional response begins to rise within you. Not because something is wrong, but because something significant is happening, and what you feel as fear in this moment is not a warning of danger, but a reflection of how meaningful this opportunity truly is. It is the natural response to standing in front of something that has the power to change you, and you may notice a hesitation that does not come from logic, but from something quieter, something more internal. A voice that questions your readiness, that asks if this is the right moment, that suggests protecting yourself from the exposure that comes with something genuine. And it is important to understand that this voice is not working against you. It is a part of your system that was shaped by previous experiences, a part that learned to connect emotional depth with the possibility of pain, and its intention is to keep you safe, to maintain control, to prevent you from stepping into something unpredictable. But what this part has not yet fully integrated is that you are no longer the same person who created those protective patterns. You have changed in ways that are deeper than you sometimes acknowledge. You have developed awareness, resilience, and a level of emotional intelligence that allows you to engage with depth without losing yourself inside it. And this moment is asking you to recognize that evolution, to see clearly that the fear arising within you is not describing your present reality, but echoing a past version of yourself that no longer defines who you are now. Because when something real enters your life, it will always require more from you than something imagined. It will ask you to be present instead of distant, honest instead of guarded, open instead of controlled. It will invite you to be seen as you truly are, rather than who you believe you need to be. And this invitation can feel overwhelming because it requires stepping beyond what is familiar and into a space that cannot be fully predicted or managed. But this is where true transformation exists. This is where growth becomes tangible. This is where you stop watching your life unfold and begin actively participating in it. And the fear you feel is not guiding you away from this moment. It is signaling that you are standing at the edge of expansion, at the threshold of something that holds the potential to reshape you in profound ways. And as you stand here, you begin to understand that the real decision in front of you is not about choosing between comfort and risk. It is about choosing between staying in a version of life that you have already outgrown, or stepping into something that is calling you forward with quiet persistence. And if you listen closely, you will notice that beneath the fear, there is another force within you, something deeper, something steadier, already leaning toward that call, already recognizing that this is where you are meant to go. And while all of this is unfolding within your internal world, something equally meaningful is taking place beyond your immediate awareness on the other side of this connection. The other person is also moving through their own process of realization. Their awareness may not mirror yours exactly, and their timing may follow a different rhythm. But the pull they feel is just as real and just as undeniable. They may be experiencing moments where clarity arrives suddenly, where pieces that once felt disconnected begin to make sense, where the distance they once maintained starts to weaken, and where truths they may have avoided begin to surface in ways that can no longer be ignored. And this awakening does not always happen in a single instant. It often unfolds, gradually building in waves, until it reaches a point where acknowledgement or action becomes unavoidable. And as their awareness expands, the nature of this connection begins to shift. It no longer exists in uncertainty or imbalance. It becomes something mutual, something shared, something that is present in both of your realities at the same time. And as both of you move closer to this shared understanding, you may begin to notice changes in the world around you that feel too precise to dismiss, patterns that repeat, moments that align perfectly, encounters that seem timed in ways that feel almost intentional, small yet meaningful signs that appear exactly when you need reassurance. And these experiences are not random. They are confirmations, subtle signals that you are moving in alignment with something larger than your immediate perspective. They act as markers along the path, gently reinforcing what you are beginning to understand, reminding you that this process is not happening in isolation, that there is a greater intelligence at work, organizing timing, energy, and circumstance to bring this connection into clarity. And the more you allow yourself to notice these moments, the more your trust begins to deepen. Even when the intensity rises or uncertainty appears, because you start to recognize that everything unfolding is part of a larger movement that is guiding you toward the next phase of this experience. A phase that will require even more presence, even more truth, and even more willingness to step fully into what is waiting for you. Notice what is happening right now, because the pace of everything is beginning to shift in a way that you can feel in your body before you can fully explain it with your mind. The movement that once felt slow or even disconnected is now accelerating, and the paths that once seemed separate, distant, or unrelated are starting to draw toward each other with undeniable force, as if something larger has decided that the time for distance has ended. And this is where the merging begins, a convergence of everything you have lived through, every decision you have made, every lesson that shaped you quietly in the background, now arriving at the same point in time. And when this convergence takes place, it can feel intense, almost overwhelming, because events may begin unfolding faster than your mind can comfortably process. But this is not disorder, it is not randomness, it is alignment, reaching a peak that can no longer be delayed. The version of reality where this connection remained hidden or unspoken is dissolving, and in its place, a new reality is forming, one where what was once subtle becomes visible and undeniable. And this transition can bring sudden realizations, unexpected shifts, or moments that feel like irreversible turning points. And in truth, they are, because you cannot return to a previous state of being when your awareness has already moved beyond it. You are no longer the same version of yourself who once existed within that older timeline. You have evolved beyond it. And what you are experiencing now is not something new being created, but rather something catching up to the truth you have already begun to live internally. And as this convergence completes its movement, you arrive at a moment that feels deeply personal, almost sacred in its intensity, a moment where everything becomes still enough for you to recognize the choice that stands in front of you. Not a choice imposed by circumstances or pressure, but one that rises naturally from within your own awareness. a choice rooted in what you now recognize as real, and you may feel the gravity of this moment, an understanding that whatever direction you move toward will shape the path ahead in ways that cannot simply be undone or reversed. And this is where the internal question becomes clear: whether to remain within the comfort of what has been familiar, even if it no longer reflects who you are, or to step forward into something unknown with trust in what you feel at your core. And there is no external measure of right or wrong here. There is only alignment or resistance movement with truth or movement against it. And if you listen closely, you will realize that a deeper part of you already knows which direction holds authenticity. And as you stand in this space of decision, you begin to understand that this moment extends far beyond the connection itself. It speaks directly to your evolution, to your willingness to accept something that resonates at the deepest level of your being. And when you make this choice, something within you begins to shift in a way that cannot be reversed, as if you have crossed an unseen threshold that separates who you once were from who you are becoming. And this is what it means to move into your highest timeline, not as an abstract idea, but as a lived experience that begins the moment you align with what you know to be true. And even if the external world does not immediately reflect this shift internally, everything changes. The confusion that once clouded your perception is replaced with a quiet certainty. Doubt gives way to a grounded sense of knowing that does not need constant validation, and this is how true alignment feels. It does not demand attention or proof. It resonates deeply and steadily within you. And as you settle into this new state, you begin to notice changes in your energy, a sense of stability where there was once fluctuation, a clarity in your perception that sharpens how you interpret everything around you, and the connection itself begins to transform in your awareness, no longer something you question or chase, but something that simply exists with presence and consistency. And in this shift you realize that you are no longer searching for answers, because you have become the clarity you were once seeking. And as this internal alignment anchors more deeply, the surrounding energy begins to take on a different quality, especially with the influence of the moon, grounded in Capricorn, bringing forward a frequency that many are not fully prepared to engage with when it comes to matters of connection, commitment, and tangible reality. Because this is not fleeting emotion or temporary intensity that fades as quickly as it appears. This is an energy that builds structure, that asks for consistency, that moves beyond feeling into form. And you may begin to sense this change in how the connection presents itself, shifting away from uncertainty or ambiguity and into something more defined, more intentional, more real, not necessarily through dramatic declarations or sudden external actions, but through a steady change in the energy itself, one that feels grounded, reliable, and purposeful, because Capricorn energy does not sustain illusion. It requires authenticity, accountability, and truth expressed through action rather than words alone. And as this grounded influence integrates into your experience, you begin to understand that this connection is not meant to exist in a state of questioning or instability. It is meant to become something tangible, something that can be built over time, nurtured with intention, and sustained through mutual presence. And as this foundation begins to form within and around you, something even deeper starts to unfold. A transformation within your emotional world that feels like a renewal, a rebirth of how you experience feeling itself, the way you connect, the way you interpret closeness, the way you understand what love truly means, begins to shift in ways that reflect not who you once were, but who you are now becoming. And this internal rebirth is only the beginning of a much larger transformation that is continuing to move forward into the next phase of your journey.